Welcome to this episode of Notes from the Pastor's Office video blog. Real quick, this episode is part of an assignment I'm doing for my Issues in Evangelism class this fall at United. It's a faith-sharing video project. In 3 to 5 minutes, you're supposed to share your faith story. That's what this is, and I hope it speaks to you. My faith story really begins in my teenage years when my family and I are attending a Church of God. I loved that church. Was heavily involved in the youth group, was even involved in the choir where I really sort of blossomed with a musical talent. Was a really formative time in my life. Unfortunately, the problem was not at the church. It was what happened when I got home before bedtime. See, the theology at that church, their idea of who God was and how he dealt with humanity was a little different than what I had ever heard, and it affected me. What I did was I laid prostrate out on my bedroom floor, and I would sometimes sob out every single sin that I had committed throughout the day in hopes that I wouldn't forget one, because I thought that one sin would make it so that God would keep me out of heaven, would throw me into hell were I to die in the middle of the night. I was miserable. I was scared out of my mind. The other problem with that was I wasn't being transformed into who God wanted me to be. I was reacting to God's wrath in my life. I wasn't actually being transformed. I wasn't being affected by the faith. So I spent many of those years while having fun at the youth group and enjoying and being welcomed into that church. Inside, I was just a mess. Afraid all the time that this one sin was going to be the one that sent me to hell. Then I met my wife, Emily, in high school. We were both part of the same theater event at our high school one fall. We fell head over heels almost immediately, but the real change came, and the real thing that would affect me for a longer term would be the time when she invited me to church. It was a church that her father just happened to be the pastor at, but I felt something different there. Now, I don't know when it was. It could have been a youth event, could have been a men's retreat, something like that. But I heard the verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, where Paul is recounting some of his trials that he has faced, and he had heard a word from God that said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness." That's what I felt when I came into the UMC, where I'm currently a pastor, and that's who I believe God is now. Yes, we are weak. Yes, we sin. Yes, we need to work in our lives to cut that out, but God's power is seen best when he is seen redeeming us from our weaknesses, those weaknesses that lead us to sin, to those times in our lives where we can disconnect ourselves from God. He is reaching out in those times for us. That's my understanding of faith. That's my faith story. God's power being seen best, not even in our weakest times, but especially in our weakest times. And in through that process, him working to transform us into the people he wants us to be. That's my faith story.